Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. Development of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, in North St. Louis is considered a boon for the city's economy, but it may have made some students and staff at the Gateway Elementary School sick. Many have experienced respiratory discomfort as a result of dust and debris from the NGA site. Our education reporter, Ryan Delaney, is on that story. He joins me in studio, along with Maria Altman, St. Louis Public Radio newscast editor, who oversees the station's business and education coverage. Thanks to both of you for being with us.
Thank you.
Ryan, your story broke this morning on our website. Give us an overview of what you're reporting.
Yeah, I spoke to about a dozen in all, parents, staff members, and volunteers in the Gateway School complex, which is three schools in one building that educates about 1,000 students. And through that reporting and a mix of open records requests through city and state agencies, we found that we're comfortable saying a couple of dozen students and staff experienced respiratory problems over the course of a few months in late fall and early winter while demolition work was going on. That was in conjunction with the NGA and at the site of the former Pruitt-Igoe School, which directly abuts the school's campus.
Is there any idea as to what exactly the contaminant is that might be causing this problem?
The big thing is just dust and dirt in the air. This material that was brought from the NGA site and placed on the Pruitt-Igoe site for storage is, according to city and state officials, not contaminated. It's been tested and is free of any lead or asbestos or other hazardous materials. Any contaminated materials were taken off-site and to a waste facility. This material is considered clean fill in the construction world, so it's mostly concrete slabs. There's bricks, a lot of rock, and just small pieces of dirt. And this is material that eventually is going to get ground down and reused as just to fill in holes or for temporary access roads during the NGA construction.
We'll certainly talk more about your story, but Maria, the NGA thing is moving along then, obviously.
It is. And, to be really clear on this, the city owns the site of where the NGA will go. It still owns that land. The transfer of the land is not expected to happen until later this year, sometime in November. And so what Ryan's story is addressing is the fact that some of the debris from the NGA site, where the city has leveled, former homes and churches and a few businesses, some of it came over to what used to be Pruitt-Igoe, land that is now owned by developer Paul McKee and happens to be next to the Gateway Elementary School. Paul McKee's name is certainly attached somewhat to this NGA site because he owned a lot of the property in what is now going to be the NGA facility when it goes up. And, he's planning on putting in an urgent care center in the former Pruitt-Igoe site. So there's going to be more construction happening next to this school.
He can't seem to stay out of the headlines these days. I mean, he's being looked at for some interesting deals with regard to tax credits and that sort of thing.
Right. You're speaking of the brown shoe building that was on the former of what will be the NGA site, and whether he actually bought that building or not.
Ryan, back to the story about the debris and the dust. Who are some of the people you've talked to in the environmentalist world, if you will?
I talked to a couple of air quality experts, including someone who does a lot of visits for homes and in schools and businesses to look for anything that could trigger an asthma outbreak or just other sort of respiratory problems. And he has not been inside a Gateway, this professor from Southeast Missouri State University. But he did tell me that just anytime there is a significant amount of dirt and dust in the air, that can either exacerbate existing problems in people such as asthma or cause them. Teachers and staff at the school that I spoke with talked about having sinus infections, a cough that lasted for several weeks, that got worse while they were at school, and the only way they could explain it was the air quality there. Someone with swollen airways on a number of instances and had to go to a doctor to get anti-inflammatory medication.
Well, go ahead.
And I wanted to add also that Ryan was able to get confirmation from the St. Louis Public Schools that they had something like 359 asthma-related visits to the school nurse in that school.
And that was from about the start of the school year through early April. This is a school, the elementary school is about 520 students or so, and then the whole complex is, like I said, a little over 1,000.
Where does responsibility for this actually lie? I mean, do we know, or is it diffused? Is it spread out?
Well, it's tough to point a finger at one particular person or agency. As Maria talked about, the property of the NGA site is owned by the city, and that work is being overseen by the St. Louis Development Corporation, the city's economic agency. The Pruitt-Igoe site is owned by McKee. We reached out to McKee. He did call me back, and we spoke for several minutes, but refused to allow anything he told me over the phone to be used in my story. And I left 5 or 6 voicemails for the vice president of this contracting company, Kolb Grading, and none of those phone calls have been returned.
Wow. So with your conversation with McKee, you can't tell us now what he said.
No, he was very emphatic that nothing from that conversation could be quoted.
Has the problem stopped? I understand that the debris was stopped at some point.
Yeah, the best we can pin down, a lot of the health problems started around Thanksgiving and lasted through early February when both we got a lot of heavy rain and the work slowed down. A meeting in April with representatives of Kolb and the school happened, and at that meeting, Kolb Grading told parents that they would wait until school gets out in a few weeks to resume any sort of work. They have 1 week until summer school starts, and that runs the entire month of June. The company also said that they would take more steps. This was in the conversation with parents, and according to our sources, the work to grind down that rubble would be done in the middle of the Pruitt-Igoe site, and wetting down the loads would happen, the spraying it with water, and they would monitor wind direction, at least if wind is blowing south toward the school.
Maria, I would guess that the refusal to talk would evidence concern over liability in something like this.
That's hard to say. Mr. McKee, I've spoken with him many times over the years, and he's usually pretty reluctant to have on-the-record conversations. So I wouldn't say that we can really say why he made that decision in this case. But one thing I'd also like to highlight is the story. Ryan is running another story tomorrow looking at sort of what is the responsibility and who's responsible for monitoring. And what I think is really interesting is that there was a lot of monitoring air quality-wise going on around the site of the NGA when this demolition work was being done. But when it moved across the street, that monitoring ended. And that was partly the state said, there really isn't a regulation saying that we have to continue monitoring it once it goes off site. But there are state regulations regarding whether dust gets kicked up in the air and if it moves toward other people, neighbors, that then, if it should be regulated. So
and state officials are saying what, Ryan?
So that what Maria is referencing is something called fugitive dust, and it's in the state environmental regulations. And that law basically says that any dust from a construction site or other places, any sort of debris particulates that gets kicked up cannot leave the original site of origin. A lot of staff members that we talked to said that several days during this work, they would leave school and their cars would just be covered in dust. One staff member said that holding her breath was something that happened a lot walking to her car at the end of the day. Kids were kept inside because, as one staff member told me, on some days the air just looked murky outside. That law, that fugitive dust law, is difficult to enforce. The Department of Natural Resources told me just because a complaint has to be logged with them, and then inspectors fairly quickly have to get there and visibly see either dust or see it leaving the site. DNR told me that their regulators never visited the site, that they did not get a complaint. The city health department did go out to the site in early February, but they conceded that it had recently rained. So proving any sort of fugitive dust was tough.
Just to be sure, I'm clear on this. The transferal of the debris has stopped for the moment, correct?
It has, yes. Kolb Grading agreed to stop putting the debris so close to the school, wait until school is out. But eventually, like I said, that debris has to be ground down and then moved back to the NGA site.
Any more debris have to come from that site before this process starts?
Kolb told parents in the meeting that their work at that point was basically done. The faultless linens building is, I believe, the only thing that is still in the NGA footprint, and that will come down sometime next month is the plan, sometime over the summer. But most of that work, most of the construction and what's called grading, that final leveling out of the land is just about done.
What have parents been saying about all of this?
Parents are scared. I talked to a couple of parents who talked about staying up all night because their kid couldn't sleep from persistent cough and not really knowing what to do. So they're scared. They're upset. There's a lot of concerns about just because these are federal brownfield sites, meaning that there is a high risk of contamination in the soil, that they don't know exactly what their kids are breathing. Again, the city and the state says that this material is free of any contamination. But they're scared and they're skeptical that any sort of steps to prevent this in the future will be enough.
Any recourse do they have? Are they considering?
Not that I know of. Like I said, there were a couple of meetings that they first convened and then brought people to the table. So I think at this point there's just a lot of close watching of that site and those piles to see what happens next and when.
But some of these respiratory ailments may not go away.
I'm not a doctor or an air quality expert, so I don't want to speculate too much. But there is some concern of any sort of lasting effect of inhaling that dirt from parents. But it's too early to see at that point if these linger. For the most part, the health issues have subsided from staff that I talked to at the school and the parents that coughs have for now gone away because with the work on pause, there's significantly less, at least, dirt being kicked up.
For now.
Yeah.
For now. Maria, let me turn back to you in the 2 minutes that we have left with regard to the NGA story. Where are we now? Obviously, they're removing debris, but what's the timetable looking like for all of this?
Well, the city is expected to turn over that land in November of this year, and they'll be turning it over to the U.S. Air Force. The Air Force will actually own the land. The U.S. Army Corps will do the construction of the $1.75 billion facility for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And the timeline is that the 3,000 or so employees will move in end of 2024. So it's a pretty lengthy construction project.
Is it still operational now to the south?
Absolutely, yes. There are 3,100 employees at that site near the Anheuser-Busch Brewery where they are now. So yes, the employees are there and work, and I think are expected. It's not expected to grow employee-wise a whole lot once the new facility is built. In terms of its economic benefits to the city of St. Louis, give us some sense of what they are going to be. Do we know? It's a little hard to say. The city very much wanted to keep those employees in St. Louis because of $2 million worth of that 1% tax that the city gets from employees. The earnings tax, Exactly. So that's a big economic driver of keeping the employees. I think that there's a lot of speculation about how this is going to help the St. Louis Place neighborhood grow, and certainly developer Paul McKee owns a lot of land up there and has big plans for 500 housing units for the urgent care center on the old Pruitt-Igoe site that I mentioned. And some neighbors are talking about how property values are increasing. So there are concerns both on the positive of things are happening, and also some neighbors worrying about, are their taxes going to go up because property values are going up? Sure. And there's the ripple effect also of small businesses that no doubt will pop up around this building to accommodate the workers when they have to have lunch and things like that. That is certainly the hope. Yeah. And it remains to be seen, but that is certainly the hope. Right. Ryan, in 30 seconds, where do we go from here with your story? Part 2 tomorrow. Part 2 tomorrow, looking more at the regulations and who owns what and where. And we have requested, through an open records request, a nurse's report that was sent to the Department of Health kind of when these concerns first came up. That's being held up right now during legal review. So hoping to have that soon. But we felt very comfortable with our sourcing at this point to publish the story. Terrific. Great story. Thank you so much, Maria Altman and Ryan Delaney. Thanks, Don. Keep up the good work.
Archive versions of past St. Louis On the Air programs available for download or podcast at stlpublicradio.org/STLOnAir. St. Louis On the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.